learned something and like what you saw here, be sure to subscribe. I will be back next week for part 3 of my review of Robert Greene's book, Mastery. But until then, thanks for watching and have a great day.
Okay, guys. Hang on, let me shut that window. So I read that book 2 different times. Why did I stop your video? What video? What video? Oh, I didn't mean to, Bella. I thought I was stopping mine. Anyway, I read that book two different times, and the sad thing is that you immediately go like, "Oh my gosh, everybody I know is a sociopath." Okay, can you hear me? Speak so I can hear you, Zach. No, maybe.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, Zach's a mute today, so he has a quirky computer. All right. Mute boy. I see that. I see that. Okay. Anybody else? I got Gunner's further study. Anybody else have any further study they want to share briefly? Gunner, do you want to talk about the 2 that you emailed me briefly?
Sure. So I did one on. Okay, tell Pierce, mute your thing because I'm hearing.
Are y'all in the same room?
Yes. Okay, so I did one on autism, and I did the other one on dyslexia. Long story short, autism, there's a wide array of levels of autism that you can have. An average of 1 in 59 children in the United States meet the criteria for having some sort of autism. And autism can be cured through lots of behavioral treatment, and it can be overcome, versus dyslexia, which will never actually, you can never actually get rid of, but you can minimize the actual effects of it by practicing and studying and kind of just taking a lot of different treatments for it, but it'll never go away. But it can, so pretty much both of them are learning disorders.
Right. Now, but autism has a much greater effect on your quality of life than dyslexia. There are whole careers you could have where dyslexia would be a minor factor. My friend that has it really bad is an interior designer. She designs houses. I'm not talking about decorating. I'm not talking about curtains. I mean, she designs like where the walls should go and stuff like that. So she draws house plans and stuff, and she's fine. Okay, I'm not going to review because I recorded last class. So how we're going to do it is we're going to have this class, then I'm going to make a recording for Monday because I'm leaving tomorrow morning and I won't be home till Monday evening because of Hoyt's wedding. And then I'll open the quiz. The quiz is due Thursday. That's our last class day. Okay, I mean, that's our last grading day. So the 2 chapters we didn't cover are treatment and research. So the last week of school, we'll have a Zoom class on Monday and Thursday just to discuss those, and that's it, all right? And then we're gonna have, I don't know, they're doing something at school, drive-by, party, I don't even know, all right? Hello, Josiah. Okay, so we're starting on page, we're starting on page 164 with psychotic disorders. So psychotic, we go back to the very beginning of psychology. It comes from the word psyche, which means what? Pierce, what does the word psyche mean? You have to go look it up. Mind, it means mind or soul, right? And then osis is, means diseased. So psychosis, cirrhosis, anything that ends with OSIS is a disease. Okay, but by and large, psychosis is some kind of break from reality. You're not in touch with reality. So you might have hallucinations, you might have paranoia or delusions, but psychosis is the main characteristic in all psychiatric disorders. Hallucinations, we talked about hallucinations when we talked about consciousness with drugs and stuff. They're perceptual experiences of stimuli that do not exist. In other words, I think I'm hearing or seeing or experiencing something that's not real. The most common hallucination is auditory. Schizophrenics often hear voices. Sometimes they think it's God. Sometimes there are cases of people who've committed horrible crimes that said, a voice told me to do that. Those hallucinations are often just unending, and they cause all kinds of misery. I believe from a spiritual perspective, if we believe in spiritual warfare, we have to consider the influence of the enemy in such things. Delusions are beliefs that are clearly false. So it can be something as extreme as someone thinks they're the president, to something as delusional as someone thinks they are, they sing like Justin Bieber and they can't carry a tune in a bucket. I knew a man whose father was convinced that the Secret Service was trying to kill him. And this man was like a band director. I mean, there was no reason to believe the Secret Service was trying to kill him. So Heath is at his brother's bachelor camping trip because he's the best man in the wedding. So he's somewhere in the woods. I don't know where he is.
What?
I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what he's doing. So this man was so sure that the Secret Service was trying to kill him. He believed when George W. Bush was the president that he was trying to kill him. So he literally called the Secret Service office in McAllen every single day and said, I see your, oh, look, there's Zach, Secret Service. I see your agents outside my window. Yes, Bella.
During my grandfather's aneurysm, I don't know if this counts, but during his aneurysm, he thought he had to go and save the president.
Oh, yeah, that's a delusion. Okay. There are ideas of references. For example, well, I just talked about those. Okay, like delusions of grandeur. He thought he had to go change the president, save the president, or persecutory delusions, thinking that someone's after you. Okay, on page 165, we have schizophrenia. And one of the ways that professionals are able to diagnose psychoses, psychotic disorders, is by affect. So, Josiah, you have your book out? Can you read for me the box on page 165?
There's no box on page 165 for me.
There's not? There's no box that says affect?
No.
Where is that box? None. Y'all don't have it on that page or the next page?
Oh, mine's on 162.
That's weird. Okay, read that.
Affect. Earlier, we defined psychology as a study of human affect, cognition, and behavior. Affect in that context referred to the experience of emotions. In the context of the symptoms of psychosis, however, affect refers to the outward expression of emotions. If you feel sad, your affect is sad. If you look sad, your affect, the outward expression, is also sad. For people with psychosis, the outward expression of emotions may be blunted, absent, exaggerated, or inappropriate for the situation. A person with flat affect seems emotionless. A person with inappropriate affect may weep uncontrollably at something that seems harmless, or laugh hysterically at nothing in particular.
Did any of you see the movie The Joker? No? Seth, you did. Okay. So
I tried, but got stopped at the theater entrance.
What?
I tried, but I got stopped at the theater entrance.
Well, I wouldn't recommend it, but if you did see it, that's a classic example of somebody with inappropriate affect. He would laugh hysterically at terribly inappropriate times. So schizophrenia, the DSM-4, now since 2013 we have the DSM-5, but the DSM-4 describes several psychotic disorders, but the most common is schizophrenia. Chronic, severe, and disabling condition that affects 1% of the population worldwide and accounts for over 50% of admissions to psychiatric hospitals. The word schizophrenia comes from the Greek word schizo, which means to split, and phreni, which means mind. like a phrenologist is somebody who studies the mind, describing the fragmented thinking of people with the condition or their split from reality. Schizophrenia does not mean split personality. Split personality is dissociative personality. Have any of you seen the movie Split? Yes? Okay, well, he has dissociative disorder. All right, the DSM-4 says there are 5 subtypes of schizophrenia. Paranoid schizophrenia, which is probably what you're most familiar with. This is the thought that, you know, there's always somebody listening, watching, whatever. Disorganized type schizophrenia, which is characterized by disorganized speech, behavior, whatever, and inappropriate or flat affect. There are several, but the most common is paranoid. The thing about schizophrenia that's weird is that there are positive and negative elements to it. Positive and negative, not positive like good, but positive like ones that you see, and negative like ones that you don't see. The text talks about positive symptoms are added to your mind, like hallucinations, delusions, disorganized thinking. The negative ones are more like the blunt comments, no affect. So it's not negative and positive as in good and bad. It's negative and positive as in plus or minus, right? Another thing that you see in schizophrenia is they have trouble experiencing pleasure. The inability to experience pleasure is called anhedonia. Do you know what a hedonist is? A hedonist is somebody who only seeks pleasure. So if there's an A, if there's a prefix in front of it, it means usually negative, right? Like abnormal as opposed to normal, asymmetrical as opposed to symmetrical. So anhedonia means, hey Matthew, means the inability to experience pleasure. So you can take a schizophrenic to a park or a carnival and you don't get a normal response to that. Mood disorders, there are like, well, DSM-4 said 15 mood disorders. I think DSM-5 said 17. The most common one that you've ever heard of is probably bipolar disorder. So there's, on one side, you have depressive disorder. This is people that are suicidal. It can be brought on by a chemical imbalance. It can be because of an actual life experience. Something's happened to them that they've gotten to the point that they're hopeless and suicidal. And then you have on the other side the manics. And these are the people that delusions of grandeur, they think that if they don't do it, it won't happen. They've got to save the world. And then what you have in the middle used to be called bipolar, used to be called manic depressive. So these people would, you know, clean their whole house, paint their house, get everything done, spend 2 or 3 weeks just like getting their life together, and then go to bed and crash and not be able to function for 2 or 3 weeks. The problem with treatment of bipolar and manic, or manic, what they used to call manic disorder, but bipolar is you can get them to go to the doctor when they're doing badly. They go to the doctor, they get on the medicine, it's chemically treating the disorder. When they're doing well, they're convinced that they're fine, and they stop taking their medicine. So has anybody ever known anybody that suffered from bipolar disorder? You probably do. It's fairly common, sadly. Anxiety disorder. Anxiety is sometimes called angst, dread, fear, worry. Anxiety can come on because of real or perceived threats. A lot of people are experiencing anxiety right now because of quarantine, because of the uncertainty of what's, you know, what it's going to be like. Even, you know, what it's going to be like to go to church. I go to a really, really big church, and they're struggling to figure out how we're going to go back to church, how many seats there are going to be in the auditorium. And it's the first time as far as I know, it's the first time in the history of the world that churches have ever been closed, especially churches closed and liquor stores open. I don't get it. But anxiety can also be from something that's absolutely not real, right? Like, for example, a phobia. Phobias are generally not real, right? Panic is extreme anxiety. A panic attack has real physical symptoms. Your heart starts to palpitate. You can't breathe. You feel sick. Sometimes people pass out when they have panic attacks. And there are treatments that you can do by yourself. So like if you're having a really strong incidence of anxiety, you have to handle something, maybe test anxiety. Some people have test anxiety. You're going to take your SAT or your ACT, and you feel yourself just kind of, getting butterflies and sick about it. You can go into your freezer and take a piece of ice and hold on to the ice. And that has a way of bringing your brain away from the panic and back into something real and tangible. You can do what's called grounding. I always wear a giving key, and I'll sometimes find myself like feeling the edges of the key, and I think, I know that's like probably an anxious response. I'm doing it because it makes me feel grounded. This is why you see lots of teenagers tapping or shuffling. It has a grounding effect. They don't even realize it's an anxious response. It's a sign of anxiety, Sethari. Okay, a phobia is an irrational and persistent anxiety and fear about something specific. Do any of you have any phobias? They're making me sick. I have a phobia against moving computer screens. Bella, what is your phobia?
Dentist and height.
You don't like heights. What is the fear of heights called, Bella? Do you know?
I don't know. Agoraphobia, I think. I don't know. But I also have, I can't stand it when people have their hands in my mouth and I can't see what they're doing.
Yeah, well, the only person that should have their hands in your mouth and you can't see what they're doing is the dentist. So
No, but like that's what I can't stand. I can't stand it when anybody has it, even if it's a dentist, even if they know what they're doing. It's just no thanks.
a lot of people don't like the dentist. Usually, though, something like that is related to a negative experience. Like
Yes.
yeah, so like my husband had all of his teeth capped when he was like 3 or 4 years old, and he has to cancel and reschedule his dentist appointment so many times because he freaks out about it. It doesn't bother me. Fear of heights. What is fear of heights called? What's fear of spiders? Agoraphobia? Agoraphobia.
Arachnophobia.
Arachnophobia, that's right. The book talks about agoraphobia, which is people being afraid of public speaking, being embarrassed, being, humiliated. Some people get claustrophobic. Does anybody have claustrophobia? Okay, that's 10 points off for Zach.
What, Mom?
20.
My mom has it.
My dad has claustrophobia.
We found out just recently my mom's claustrophobic.
I actually find great comfort in small spaces. Like I love to get in little bitty places and sit and read and stuff. And we
Is there a phobia for big open spaces?
Big open spaces are fine, but I'm with you. I'm not a huge fan of heights. I'm not really afraid of them, but I'm not going to be the person standing on the edge looking over.
I agree. It's like I hate it when like you're walking and everything below you is moving, like at a different pace than the ground on your feet. And it's
I
just
actually have a book about all the people that have died goofing off at the Grand Canyon. So it kind of made me really not like heights. Anybody else? Zach, you have any unusual fears?
That's the Grand Canyon. I have arachnophobia.
You're afraid of spiders? You live in the country. That's got to be rough.
Oh my gosh. Gunnar, turn off mute yourself, Gunnar. I am. No, just turn your sound down. Sorry. I have a fear of clowns.
That's very common. What is that called?
my mom has a fear of clowns, but that one's associated with the negative experience as well.
Yeah, usually.
Watched it. Yeah, she did not.
Me too. Yeah, the movie
What
It.
did you watch?
The movie It mess you up. Fear of
We watched it at a very, very young age.
the fear of clowns is called coulrophobia. And the likely causes are scary movies because people always, COULRO phobia. And apparently,
Colorphobia?
coulrophobia. COUL. I think that's how you spell it. Okay.
Not afraid of coolers.
Anyway, all right. So from there, the book talks about, so read about, let me see, Gunnar. Can you read for me the symptoms of a panic attack? For me, that's on page 166, but it seems like this chapter is different for y'all.
Yeah, it's on page 164. A panic attack describes the sudden onset of intense fear, apprehension, an urge to escape, and a sense of impending danger, doom, or death. Palpitations, sweating, trembling, shortness of breath, chest pain, nausea, dizziness, numbness, or chills accompany the feeling of panic.
Yeah. Has anybody ever had a panic attack? Yes, Bella? I have.
My mom too.
You're not kidding, Zach? You're really afraid of little kids? Okay. Obsessions, recurrent, unwanted, and intrusive thoughts. So when we think of obsessions, we usually think of things like hand washing or having to have things lined up a certain way, something like that. But it can also be mental. You know, it can be that, like ruminating, you can't keep your mind from thinking about certain, like if you're worried about something coming up and you like every time you tell yourself, it's like sometimes, you know, you have mantras. Like I have a mantra. When I go to an amusement park, I tell myself, now I'm not talking about a carnival, but like a real amusement park, like Six Flags. And my kid, I'm the mom that rides everything. If they want to ride it, I ride it. And so I look at that rickety roller coaster and I tell myself, if anybody ever died, they would have to shut down. So it must be safe, right? So that's how I get over it. But like I'll have obsessive thoughts about hanging upside down from the roller coaster, which, you know, it actually does happen. So obsessive compulsive, who can tell me what Sigmund Freud, what phase of psychosexuality Sigmund Freud would have said you didn't pass through successfully if you had OCD? Anybody?
Alex. Anal.
It was about potty training. It was about control. Yeah. Anal retentive people are obsessive compulsive, according to Sigmund Freud. The next one in the book is PTSD. And this is a term that gets thrown around a lot. And it gets thrown around a lot. Seth and Pierce, get yourself together. It gets thrown around a lot and it gets used inappropriately. People use the word, for example, triggered. I was triggered by that. Okay, what a trigger actually is when you are faced with something that for whatever reason, let's say one day you're walking across the pasture, Zach, and you look down and there's a rattlesnake. And you're like, holy cow, I came this close to getting struck by a rattlesnake. I mean, and it's like, it's ready to get you. I mean, it's serious. So 2 days later, you go walking across the pasture and there's a garden hose and you jump and you scream. You were triggered because the garden hose reminded you of the snake. So a trigger isn't, oh, somebody was rude to me, so I was triggered. No, a trigger is, so a child is, well, like I read a book not that long ago called Spilled Milk. And it was about this girl who was badly abused in her home. Her father was a very, very, very angry personality. And she was at a friend's house when she was in junior high. And the friend's little brother knocked over a glass of milk and it spilled during supper and it spilled all over the table. And immediately this girl said, oh, I'll take him to his room. It's fine. And she got him out of the way. Pierce and Seth, it's very distracting. And she got him out of the way because in her house, somebody would have gotten hit for that. So she was triggered by the milk to assume that what she expected to happen would happen. That's what a trigger is. That's how PTSD actually works. And it's sad and strange, but until Desert Storm, American soldiers did not receive one single bit, and Desert Storm wasn't much of an engagement. But even World War I, World War II, Korea, Vietnam, atrocious things happened, and soldiers did not receive one single bit of counseling when they came back to the United States. They didn't automatically go into some type of situation where they could, you know, offload whatever horrific things they'd seen. So that's the most common thing you think. So like the classic story, how many of you have seen American Sniper? Yes. Okay, so Chris Kyle is in the backyard at this birthday party and the dog gets really aggressive And the part of him that has learned to be super protective because of his experiences in the Middle East jumps up, grabs the dog, and his wife is like, what are you doing? Okay, so he was triggered by this active aggression. Okay, so that's what it looks like. Let's see, about 5 minutes. Yeah, I'll finish this, and then I'm going to post on iGrade, check iGrade. Okay. Somatoform disorders are like things that aren't real. When you're a hypochondriac, a conversion disorder. I actually have a strange conversion disorder. A conversion disorder often, this is a very peculiar connection in the human mind, but it happens often that, like, say, for example, rape victims sometimes go blind. Not forever, and it's not real. They're not actually blind. There's no actual medical reason, but they can't see. And so maybe it's their mind's way of protecting them from, what happened to them. That's a conversion disorder. Hypochondria, you're probably familiar with that term. Somebody's a hypochondriac if they always think there's something wrong with them. They have a cough and they're just sure they have corona. And then the text goes on and talks about dissociative disorders. So all of us have the ability to disassociate. Oh, really, Bella? That's sad. My dad was a mortician in the Korean War. Lots of bad things. Yeah. So all of us have the ability to kind of like disassociate when things are super uncomfortable and you don't know how to act and you kind of just like become a different person. You notice it sometimes in big families where if you remove one sibling, usually if you remove the oldest sibling, the dynamics of the family changes. Then when that older sibling comes back on the scene, like maybe you notice this, Zach, when your sister comes home, the other siblings find themselves kind of acting different. So they sort of disassociated. They sort of took on a different personality when the dynamic changed, and then when the dynamic went back, they kind of, separate. But a true dissociative disorder is when you have what used to be called multiple personality disorder. That's the movie Split. That's an extreme case. There are other stories historically. There's a movie called Sybil that's based on an actual true story. And then there's another, what's her name? Many Faces of Eve, another story. And usually that kind of extreme disassociation is a result of very traumatic childhood abuse. Okay, so I'm gonna stop there. I'm gonna make a video of the rest. This is being recorded so you can watch it again. And then I will post on iGrade what you need to do. Right now, the only further studies I have are from Heath, Phoenix, and Gunner. Matthew, did you send something?
I have it, but I thought we were gonna discuss it in the meeting, but I'll send it to you.
Okay, well, we started, but you were late for the meeting. So that was the first thing I did, but you were a little bit late and we only have a minute left. Matthew, I'm sorry. Just send it to us, all. Send it to us all. Okay, check iGrade, check YouTube, okay? For those of you that were hunting or fishing or whatever you were doing last week, I hope you watched the video. There's 2 of them because it was back to back. And pray for me because I'm going to the wedding.
Godspeed.
Thanks. Okay, guys, take care.
Bye, Ms. Crouch.
Bye,
You
Bill.
too. Bye, everybody.
Bye.